We're going to fill you guys all in on what to do, who to watch, who to look out for, any names you might know, anything about the Super League that you want to know. You're about to find out right now.
Yeah, that's right. We like to fill in everybody on all the information that they need to have to stay most up to date. So we're going to do that with this WSL 101. And later in the week, we're actually going to have a deep dive on Women's Super League with women's football writer Sophie Lawson. Thank you to her for joining us, and we're really excited for you all to check out that episode when it publishes. And let's just dive in, Lisa. We got Barclays WSL 101. Here's what we got to talk about. First, we got to talk about what is it? What is Women's Super League, right? It's the top flight of women's football in England, and it is a fully professional league with 12 teams. Seasons taking place from September to May each year, and this is going to be the 12th edition of it.
Yeah, so it's just 2 years older than the NWSL. We know that we're celebrating the 10th year of that in the States. How it works, it's similar to the men's side, honestly, in England and how they play. So each of the 12 teams, they play their opponents both home and away between September and May. And the top 2 teams at the end of the year, the top 3 teams, it was recently expanded to the top 3 teams in the Super League, qualify for the UEFA Women's Champions League. So that is the golden nugget. That's where these teams want to be. It's another league that these teams can get into. Meanwhile, the bottom place team is relegated to the FA Women's Championship. So that is just below the Women's Super League. And then meanwhile, one team from the championship is promoted to the Super League each year. So last year, Birmingham City were relegated in the Super League. They finished the year with 11 points. They've been in the Super League since 2011. First time that Birmingham City has been relegated, but they are out this year. We get Liverpool back into the Women's Super League. They were promoted from the championship last year. So now we've got our 12 teams to run through that will be in this year's edition of the Super League.
I'm hyped for that. I think in this part of the 101, I think sort of highlighting that's probably one of the key differences, right? I think in terms of like Women's Super League compared to NWSL, and we chat a little bit about this as well with Sophie. So please stay tuned for that episode. But talking about how every single year there's a bottom place team that is relegated, and then a top team from the champions to come on up, essentially.
Mm-hmm.
So you see a difference, year to year sometimes, depending, I think, on the season, which makes for an interesting 12-team race, in the next following season. So for this upcoming season, let's take a look at all the 12 teams that are going to be involved. It's going to be Chelsea. They're the reigning champions of the WSL, closed out with 56 points. Arsenal were the runners up last year. They narrowly missed out on the title by 1 point with 55 points. And Kim Little is their captain. So we're going to talk a little bit about her a little later in the show. Might be a name that is familiar with folks. In third place was West Ham United and Aston Villa as well. So that's kind of rounding out the top 4. It's kind of interesting to sort of know how, like, when you're looking at teams kind of running the table, taking a look at last year's standings compared to this year's standings, you have Chelsea at the top of the table, like, for the last several seasons. Quite frankly, there hasn't really been a change from last year to this year in terms of top of the standings, essentially. So I think taking a look at the rest of these teams, it's going to be an opportunity to maybe make some picks. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see how I feel. But Chelsea, Arsenal 1 and 2. Number 3, Manchester City. Number 4, Manchester United. Number 5, Tottenham. Number 6, West Ham. And number 7 was Brighton And Hargrove, number 8 was Reading. Number 9 was Aston Villa. Everton, Leicester City, Birmingham City was the table for last year, and it's a little bit different
Mhm.
this year. So with Chelsea and Arsenal going 1 and 2, Manchester City, Man United, Tottenham Hotspur, West Ham United, Brighton and Hove Albion, Reading, Aston Villa, excuse me. It's the Spanish speaking side of my brain tuning in, y'all. It's gonna happen. I'm gonna just apologize for it now as the season kicks off. Aston Villa finishing ninth place, Everton, Leicester City, excuse me, and Liverpool, the newly promoted women's champions winners, and it's gonna be their first time back in the WSL since 2020.
Yeah,
And I don't know. I think sort of looking at some of these teams, Lisa, I think you have to imagine that maybe the top, top 2 to top 4 are probably going to be the teams that people are going to have their eyes on, right?
for
As the
sure.
season goes from September to May.
For sure,
Um,
yeah. When you look at these teams, the 12 teams in it, yeah, Liverpool back since 2020. This is their first time back in the WSL in a handful of years. But in terms of the points, and mainly just looking at last season, the 2020-2021 season, or 2021-2022 season, with Chelsea, Arsenal, City, and United at the top, those were the top 4 standings. When you look at the points disparity, how these teams finished out, Chelsea, of course, won the WSL by 1 point. They had 56 points, and Arsenal right under them at 55 points. Meanwhile, City and United, 47 and 42 points, respectively, following right under them. And then there comes a little bit of a drop off. Tottenham with 32 points, West Ham with 27 points, and then so on and so forth with Leicester City at the bottom. They finished 11th, so just up from relegation with 13 points. So the points disparity from 11 points, who was Birmingham City, who actually got relegated last year, they had 11 points, to Chelsea, who ended with 56 points. The disparity between top and bottom of this league is there is disparity, let's just say, and it comes down to the top 3 teams wanting to play in UEFA Champions League, and the bottom teams really not trying to be relegated. They want to stay in this competition. They want to stay at the top of their game. So just I think that's super interesting to look at about this Super League, because it's not so much as like, hey, we just want to finish in the top 3 so we can get Champions League, but we don't want to leave the Super League. We don't want to go to women's championship. We want to stay in this top league, and stay competing. So I think like some of those teams that are right in the middle, whether it's West Ham, Brighton and Hove Albion, Reading, Aston Villa, Everton, they're all really in that mix to kind of shuffle between 5th and 10th place at any given point in this season. So it's kind of
I think
interesting to like break it down that way.
I think it sort of gives like I think at a certain point in the season for women's Super League, like you almost sort of have your eye on 2 separate races,
Yeah,
like you're obviously looking, even just going off of last season, like you're obviously looking at who's going to be coming out on top, right? Like who's going to actually win the Shield, and it came down to like the last day, and Chelsea ended up winners on that one. But you're also looking at the other side, like I guess it's like a relegation race in that sense. Like you're trying to make sure that
honestly, it is. Yeah.
you're not dropping off out of this fully professional women's league. So I would imagine that in seasons past that there were those type of 2 different ends of the table that were being watched, and I would imagine that that's likely going to be the case coming up in the 2022-23 season as well. So we're going to keep our eyes on that for sure. So we've gone through all 12 teams for everybody, but you know what we got to do? We got to talk about some players in women's Super League, players that you got to keep an eye on, big names you may have heard of, and any familiar names that might resonate with fans